that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 354th episode of Energy Week with the appallingly slow George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. I'm in the flesh, too. But, you know, I got up this morning and I was thinking, am I really in the flesh? I'm getting old. Anyway, today is the 16th of January. It's a Thursday morning. We're doing our recording for the show, which will probably come up later today or tomorrow and stay up for a week. I'm going to start out with an appeal for money. At the end of this month, our account comes due, and I've been appealing for money every week. This is a tax-deductible donation, not to Energy Week, not to me, not to Tom. It goes to BCTV, and in order to keep our accounts straight, we have to get $105.
By the end of this month?
By the end of the month.
Wow.
Wow. Tough one. Well, if nobody else will give it, I will. So Energy Week will keep going. It will take the onus off me if you donate. That'll be nice. If we have excess donations, they will go to BCTV, which, by the way, spends a very large multiple of what we're being charged for Energy Week, what the amount that Energy Week has to raise. They spend a multiple of that keeping the show going.
Keeping the show going.
So we're only giving a small portion. So, you know, any excess would go to BCTV and help keep the show on. Anyway, that is that.
Well, it's a community service. Think of it that way.
Yep. If you want to give, go to BrattleboroTV.org. Brattleboro is spelled out Brattleboro TV.org. And you can click on the support local broadcasting, and when you put in the amount, go down to the box below that and put in a note saying that it's for Energy Week. And as I said, today is the 16th. We're starting our reports on Thursday, January 9th.
And we're going to start with a picture.
We are going to start with a picture. If you hear something that you want to look into more, go to the blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, and you can click on the calendar to get to the day, and that'll limit you to about...
Some of these are real good.
Some of these are really good.
At least one I can think of that is almost mandatory. It's
oh, yeah.
well worth reading.
Yeah. Okay, we're starting out with a picture. There it is.
And there's the picture.
Oh my gosh, that looks like something out of... This is not the worst. We've got another picture coming up that's worse than this. But this looks like something out of a bad dream.
Well, it says after a fire, so it could be what's happening in Australia.
It's in Australia. That title I put on because the only thing that I could find for this was COO public domain.
Well, if you've been following this show and if you've been following the news, Australia's in deep doo-doo. I mean, they're in
fires
trouble.
All
There's
over
no
the place, question about it.
Which we will be talking about on this show.
More than once.
Because it's probably the biggest news item right now in climate going on anywhere.
I would say so, yes. What do you have for a title for this? This is
Pathway.
Go ahead.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say this is phys.org, phys.org.
Yep. Pathways to changing the minds of climate deniers.
This is an interesting article. Researchers at Stanford found that those who deny human causes for climate change can be swayed through conversations that appeal to their different identities, reframe solutions, or even embrace their climate views. They have 4 suggestions for breaking down the barriers, and I bet you can tell us more about those.
I got the 4 suggestions written down here, and I guess since it's early in the show, we can talk about it.
We can talk about it.
Well, you start by acknowledging and respecting people's beliefs.
Yes.
Duh. And the items are, the first one is reframing solutions to climate change as ways to uphold the social system and work toward its stability and longevity. In other words, think positive.
Right.
Okay, the second one is reduce the ideological divide by incorporating the purity of the earth rather than how much we harm or care for it.
Right.
Okay, the third one is having conversations about the scientific consensus around climate change with trusted individuals. Okay, and the last one is encouraging people to explicitly discuss their values and stance on climate change prior to engaging with climate information.
Yeah.
And from a different website, but a very interesting aside, this says that better educated Republicans were more skeptical of modern climate science than their less educated
I
brethren.
think there's a reason for that, and the reason has to do
Let
with...
me finish.
Oh, I'm
finish
sorry,
that
go
and
ahead.
tell us. Only 19% of college-educated Republicans agreed that the planet is warming due to human actions, versus 31% of non-college-educated Republicans. For Democrats and independents, the opposite was the case.
You know, I'll bet
What's going on here?
those,
What's going on,
those
George?
well-educated Republicans are probably not going out into the woods much.
I would say.
Yeah.
I think the article said they are not doing what they believe, but they're doing what they think they should believe.
Yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense. One of the things that happened early on when I started doing my blog work, which is 8 years ago now, I found out that there were two different kinds of websites, two different kinds of news media. One of them was all over the map. They had people writing in favor of renewable energy, against renewable energy, in favor of
In other words, objective.
Yeah, they were trying to be objective, and they had lots of different points of view. Another one was adamantly against, well, I have to say there were certain websites that were adamantly in favor of renewable energy and climate science. But there was a group that was adamantly against anything that was renewable. If it had renewable attached to it, it was wrong as far as they were concerned. It didn't work, it was a scam, and they also were adamantly against anything that said that there was human-caused climate change. And one other thing that I found in that group that was adamantly against renewable energy and so forth was that they tied those beliefs to socialist politics, which they were against. Yep. And one other thing was they were all financed by the same 4 or 5 people.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. This was David Koch, Charles
Yeah, I was
Koch.
going to say the Kochs. Yeah.
People
And
at
I wouldn't be surprised
ExxonMobil.
if Exxon wasn't throwing some money at him.
And also Rupert Murdoch.
And Murdoch.
Yeah, and Murdoch says that there's no climate denial in any of his news media, including Fox.
Well, I don't watch Fox, so I don't know.
Well, I wonder if he isn't getting too old. I know I am.
Well, let's move along here. This
Okay,
is
our
an
next
interesting
item is
article.
from Clean Technica.
It's an interesting article.
This is an interesting article.
Tesla is the most valuable auto company in the history of America. I wouldn't have thunk.
Barron's noted on January 7th, 2020, that Tesla had become the most valuable auto company in U.S. history. Let me repeat, not just currently, we're talking about the most valuable American auto company ever. Congratulations to Elon Musk.
Well, this is what they mean there. Tesla, at nearly $89 billion, beats out the old automaker market cap market.
Yeah.
Market cap.
Yeah,
And a market cap is the market value of a publicly traded company's outstanding shares.
which you get by taking the price per share
a
and
measurable
multiplying
item. I mean,
you multiply it by the number of shares.
And if Tesla is now 89 billion, the old leader was Ford in 1999 at 81 billion. So Tesla's got doing
Times
something
have
right.
changed. Well, people are betting on electric cars, and the fact is that Tesla's way out ahead.
They're
of everybody.
way out ahead. Well,
Except-
sometime during 2021, Tesla will have produced more than 1 million vehicles within a year. So they're growing rapidly.
They're growing very rapidly. There is one car company that might be bigger that sells electric cars, and that's BYD. But BYD,
Yeah.
I don't think BYD is selling as many cars. BYD sells big vehicles, though.
Well, they sell buses.
They sell buses and earth-moving equipment.
They're
and-
in China. Their market is China, and that market is huge.
Yeah, They have a market in the United States, but, Anyway, we are still on November 9th, and we've got an item
Got
from
another
CNN.
picture coming up here.
And there is a picture of a guy in Australia, and I want to explain what this is. That's not just a fan he's in front of. That is a misting fan.
It's blowing water on it.
Yeah, that's right. And there was a really interesting article today. We're going to have next week about irrigation, but about the evaporation of water cooling the earth.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, what this thing is saying is 2019 was the second hottest year on record.
That's what it says. From France to Australia, from India to Alaska. If you stepped outside almost any corner of the globe, you'd feel it. 2019 was hot, really hot. In fact, we just lived through the second hottest year ever on record, according to the European Union's flagship climate monitoring organization.
Well, the only year that was hotter was 2016.
Yeah.
And only by a hair.
Only by a hair.
And a hair means 0.02 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a pretty small
Not
hair.
an amount that we'd really notice.
And the last decade was the warmest ever recorded.
And the last 5 years were the hottest 5 years ever recorded.
That's correct.
Man.
And nearly every region on Earth experienced above average temperatures.
And you know what? There are still people out there that say the climate change is on hiatus.
Yep. Well, let's
don't know
move
what to
along
say.
here to
We're up to
Friday, January 10th.
I was going to say that, January
Oh, yeah.
10th. That's okay,
How
you can
about
say it.
that?
CNN has this.
Trump announces overhaul of landmark environmental and climate rules.
He's just doing this in order to...
He's trying. Well, it looks like anything Obama did, he want to undo.
Well, it's not just Obama. He's undoing stuff that was done by Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. And oh, man. President Donald Trump announced changes to the National Environment Policy Act rules, which requires federal agencies to assess the environmental impacts of projects such as the construction of mines, highways, water infrastructure, and gas pipelines.
Yep.
That's what he did.
Well, Trump has taken significant steps to reverse Obama-era environmental protections. As
yeah,
I just
we know
said.
that.
New regulations will relax government efforts to fight the climate crisis and make it easier to build infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he's all about.
And people are going to go broke on this.
I think so.
And the reason why they're going to go broke is because it looks like it's going to be easier to invest in things that are obsolete.
Yeah.
And they don't put that together. Donald Trump tried to resurrect coal without thinking, maybe this is not a good idea because it's obsolete technology. And now he's doing it with gas.
Well, the Center for Biological Diversity called the new regulation a gift to the fossil fuel industry.
Well,
It really is. Forcing federal agencies to ignore environmental threats is a disgraceful abdication of our responsibility to protect the planet for future generations.
Well, it stands the law on its head. It's like saying we have a law against people stealing things, but we're going to make it easier for people to do it by changing the regulations under which that law is
we
enforced.
redefine stealing.
Well, you know.
Something like that. Well,
Yeah.
we got another picture coming up here.
We do.
Let's see
And this
if I
is
can
a,
find it.
you know, every time I see these things, I get a little bit irked.
That's a Cadillac.
That's a Cadillac. It's a Cadillac Eevee. It is a Cadillac electric vehicle. GM is putting a lot into the Cadillac electric vehicles.
Yes, they are, as I read in the article. Well, GM and LG Chem, 30 plus gigawatt hour Ohio battery gigafactory highlights rapid EV industry progress. And I said before, whenever you see gig, think big.
Think big, unless it's a gigajoule. a joule is, a
It's
Joule, is an amount of
That's
energy
small.
that is so small that a gigajoule is still not very big. Okay, there are a few measurements like that. A month ago, GM and LG Chem, I think LG stands for Life's Good,
It does.
and
Yeah.
it's Chinese.
Well, it's in China, but it's American owned.
Oh, okay. A month ago, GM and LG Chem announced a joint venture to build a 30-plus gigawatt-hour battery factory in Ohio and drive down battery costs in the process. The announcement shows how clearly and how quickly the EV industry has changed. This is from Clean Technica, by the way.
Well, I got a little note here. I'll just repeat it because it repeats what we just said. Giga is a prefix indicating a billion.
Yeah.
So the batteries will be used in GM electric vehicles, and they're coming out with 4 new fully electric Cadillac models.
All Cadillac.
Oh, this is just Cadillac, okay, within the next 2 years. So
Okay.
this is combining GM's manufacturing expertise with LG Chem's leading battery cell technology, okay, which sounds like a smart move to me.
Yeah.
And it's going to accelerate the pursuit of an all-electric future, which is
Right.
coming, folks.
Well, our next item kind of comments on that, I think,
does.
a little bit.
This is interesting,
This is
too.
also from Clean Technica.
Ride-hailing group Free Now buys 60 Tesla automobiles.
Free Now is a mobility service owned by 2 car companies jointly, Mercedes and BMW.
Yep.
The Handelsblatt report says Free Now decided to expand its fleet of electric taxis in Germany and will begin that by adding 60 Teslas to its fleet in the cars in Hamburg, where Free Now has its headquarters.
It's interesting there. I don't know why they don't call it a taxi service, because that's what a mobility service is.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
taxi
it's
cab company.
it's a little bit more. It's
Well, you can use your cell phone.
you
and
can
get a
use
taxi
your
cab.
cell phone, and yeah.
Well, Free Now has about 30,000 drivers throughout Europe, so they're not small change.
Yeah, they have billions of dollars of income.
It grossed over $2 billion in 2019 from
Yeah.
300 million trips. So they're
Yeah.
out there. Neither Mercedes, this is the interesting part of it, neither Mercedes nor BMW, who owns the company, has electric cars of their own they consider up to the task. So the score in the electric taxi revolution stands at Tesla 60, Mercedes and BMW 0.
0, yeah. Okay, we're up to Saturday,
And we got
January
another picture
11th.
coming up here.
And we have a picture coming up.
And let's
This
look
is
at
a
that
scary picture.
It is a scary picture. And if you haven't guessed it already, that's Australia.
Oh, you can tell just by looking at the countryside.
I guess you can.
I want to point out that at the bottom of that screen are meadows of some kind. They're parts
Well, it
of
looks like
farms.
that, doesn't
and
it?
farms in Australia are, by American standards, anywhere other than Texas, they are absolutely huge.
Yeah. Well,
So-
when they started these farms, Australia had a lot of vacant land. It still does, but you can't grow on most of it. But all the good land's been taken already. But
Yeah, well, that's I think been the case for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
But see, did you?
and I haven't read what it says, so
Oh, okay.
I will. Australia is burning. The Arctic is melting, yet Trump keeps gutting climate change regulations.
Yeah. So the article that we're talking about here really doesn't talk about Australia. It just came with that particular picture, and I thought that picture was significant enough that it was worthwhile. It was worthwhile putting up so people
We'll
can
leave
see
it
it.
up for a little while.
That is a picture of a fire, which by the standards of the fires going on in Australia right now, it's actually a rather small fire. There's a mega fire, which we're going to talk about. That
It's a merger.
it's
The
20
fires are merging.
Yeah, it's 20% bigger than the state of Delaware. This thing is not that big, but it's big enough that it's actually causing its own weather. And
Yep.
that's what's going on there. Okay.
Well, it says Australia is burning, the Arctic is melting, yet Trump keeps gutting climate change regulations.
Yep. Increasingly, the world is feeling the dangerous impacts of climate change, but the Trump administration is steadfast in pursuit of one of its signature policy goals, gutting environmental regulations, including those aimed at curbing climate change.
I think we got time to talk about this. 'Cause
Okay.
I have some of Trump's rollbacks
Yes.
to mention. First of all, he's overhauling a landmark law requiring environmental assessments. Huh?
So you don't need to do environmental assessments
Right.
before you,
Yeah, go.
you know,
just go
build
ahead
your
and do it.
strip mine or put in a natural gas pipeline or whatever it is you're going to do.
And he's replacing the Clean Power Plan.
Well, he's been working on that
Been working on
from
that
the
one,
day
right.
one. You know.
And this one is cool. Opening public lands and waters offshore to oil and gas drilling.
Why would we do that?
Money.
Yeah, except for one thing, and that is we're opening these things up to an industry that isn't doing exploration anymore. And the reason they're not doing exploration anymore is because the price of oil and gas is so low.
So low, it isn't worth doing.
So it isn't worth doing. Okay.
Well, he's pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yeah, he did that.
He's loosening restrictions on methane emissions.
Yeah, why bother
And
about
methane's
methane?
worse than CO2.
Yeah, why bother about methane emissions? You know.
Delaying ratification of a treaty on hydrofluorocarbons, which has been a foregone conclusion. These are the things you use in refrigerators and air conditioners.
Yeah.
And if they get out, they're bad news.
They're bad news for the environment. Yeah.
1,000 times greater warming potential than CO2.
Yeah.
And
And
as
they
far as
they
I
also,
know, they're not using them in modern
well,
refrigerators.
they are, but they're not the same hydrofluorocarbons that are fluorochlorocarbons or it used to be that they used Freon.
A little bit better for us.
Yeah, it used to be that they used Freon, and Freon was banned while Ronald Reagan was president. And Ronald Reagan,
he wouldn't do a thing like that.
well, no, you see, Ronald Reagan looked at this and he said, okay, what is it going to cost to ban it? And on the other hand, what will it cost if it turns out that these guys who are saying that the stuff is so nasty happen to be correct? And he looked at the one figure and he looked at the other figure and he said, we can't afford not to do this. And that's a thinking that the Trump administration is not
he
willing
was
to
more
do.
practical and Trump was more ideological.
See, the thing is, the way Ronald Reagan was working, if you presented him with the data on climate change, he would
I
say,
actually read it.
we have to stop this.
Yeah.
We don't. He might even take up the line, we don't know what's going on, but if that's going on, we have to stop it. We can't take any chances. And what's happening with the current administration is they're saying, okay, you're telling me my house is on fire, and I'm going to tell you I've canceled the fire insurance, and I'm not going to get it back because it costs too much, and I happen to know that the house isn't on fire. I don't even have to look. Okay.
Let's move along here.
Okay.
California's renewable energy targets slashed carbon pollution. Now there's a proposal to pause them.
Yep. Analysis shows
This isn't Trump doing it, although he's trying to do it too.
Analysis shows California's renewable energy targets helped drive a large drop in emissions and pushed the state past its 2020 climate goals early. Yet one California lawmaker wants to put a stop to the mandate for now.
Two.
Okay, it's for now though. This is from Lost Coast Outpost.
Well, the deadly 2018 campfire burned through the districts of the two lawmakers, the one that you mentioned and another guy. And they say California needs to free up utility funds to harden the electrical infrastructure that stopped that blaze.
Which is a little different from what Donald Trump is doing.
Well, it's having the same effect, but yeah.
They want to make the infrastructure harder. And you know what would make better sense would be to install batteries that are islandable locally so that if you have one of these fires, you can shut down the grid around the area.
Yep.
Or you can keep the grid going around the area and shut it down just where the fire is.
So the fire doesn't start somewhere else.
We're going to have a different paradigm for transmission. You've talked about this many times, where
well, it's going to be distributed.
It's going to be distributed, absolutely. And people haven't got, it's complicated to think about, and people haven't quite got that yet. Now, do you want to go on?
Well, while emissions from electricity have dropped, emissions are ticking up in other parts of the economy, like transportation.
Transportation is a
And we're
problem.
going to talk about
We are going to talk about
transportation
a little bit right now.
We got a picture coming up, and I just love this car. This is elegant. What a car.
What a car.
That is elegant.
That was a car that was built at a time when the word coupe meant something massive.
I meant a two-door something massive.
Yeah, well, that was a coupe. That didn't have a back seat.
Well, a little tiny back seat. Or maybe it was a rumble seat.
It might have had a rumble seat. I doubt that Chrysler had a rumble seat. But a Model A Ford coupe had a rumble seat, and that was my ideal car.
Huh?
I always thought the Model A Ford was my ideal car, at least from an aesthetic point of view. It's absolutely gorgeous.
They used to call it a mother-in-law seat.
Yeah. And we used to call the Model A Ford, the guy across the street owned the puddle jumper.
Oh, yeah?
He had a...
Well, Fiat Chrysler will basically fund Tesla's gigafactory 4.
What does this mean? This is from
Well,
Clean
big means
Technica.
big.
Yeah, right. Last year, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles made a deal
I'm going to put that
to
car up
pool its fleet with Teslas in order to comply with Europe's stricter emissions rules. According to a U.S. investment bank, the deal was worth $2 billion. They're going to be paying Tesla $2 billion to allow their fleets to be combined so that they can get through without fines. Just imagine what those fines must be. So,
yeah, they're playing games here. Really.
They are, and this will basically fund Tesla's new German factory. This is something that I think is just mind-boggling. It means they don't want to change the way they're doing things, so they're going to pay $2 billion to be allowed to continue, and that money is going to go into funding their competition. Now, is this smart
It's an interesting
thinking?
way of looking at it.
Is that
It's accurate.
smart?
Well,
Right.
Fiat Chrysler has coming plug-in hybrid versions of the Jeep Compass,
Yeah,
the Renegade, and the Wrangler,
yeah,
plus a fully electric Fiat 500.
yeah.
So they're going to be making electric cars,
But,
so they
you
need the
know,
batteries.
They need the batteries, but for crying out loud, that gigafactory is going to be building cars in addition to batteries. So we are up to Sunday, January 12th, and we have an item from the Observer Reporter,
This is interesting,
which I
too.
think is a Pittsburgh publication.
I would expect. I would expect it's Pittsburgh. Well, traffic on the Monongahela River slows due to a slump in coal demand. A little geography lesson here. The Allegheny and the Monongahela meet in Pittsburgh.
And the
And
Ohio.
they form the Ohio.
Which
And
comes
that's why
out.
Pittsburgh is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Pittsburgh's three rivers have dropped from being the #1 inland port in the United States. If you had asked me what's the #1 inland port, I would have said probably Chicago, and if not, Detroit. No, it was
Pittsburgh.
To 4th due to a slump in demand for coal. Shipping on the rivers has dropped from nearly 52 million tons in the early part of this century, that is the 21st century,
Yeah, that's
to
not too long ago.
Yeah, 27 million in 2017. That's almost a drop of half because coal is not being
People
shipped.
don't want it anymore.
What does
you
that
can't make
tell
money
you?
on it.
Wow.
Well, hauling of coal by barge made up most of the tonnage that was shipped.
Yeah.
Okay, so rapid expansion of natural gas in southwestern Pennsylvania dealt the blow to King Coal. Now, Cincinnati has replaced Pittsburgh as the largest port.
Wow.
I wouldn't have thought that. But
I
Cincinnati
never would have thought
No.
it. Never. Absolutely never.
But it's on the Ohio River, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, okay, there are certain things about which I just don't know. Okay, our next item is from The Guardian. We're still on Sunday,
got a
January 12th.
picture coming up here.
We do. Let me put that up. That is a picture from Dante's Inferno, actually taken by a guy named Sam Moy. Okay,
I'll
he
take your word
went
for
down
it.
into the nether reaches and found the people who were being, well,
Well, specifically, it's called the Dunn Road Fire.
man, isn't that horrible?
Wow. Look at that. Look at that.
There's a picture later on that is also, but anyway,
Well, Scott Morrison
yeah.
can't afford to waste bushfire crisis when Australia urgently needs its own New Deal. Now he's the prime minister.
Own Green New Deal. I just want to repeat those words.
Australia needs its own Green New Deal.
And
that's what
we have to explain this. Scott Morrison is the current climate change denying Prime Minister of Australia. He's no longer
For now.
climate change denying.
he's not
at
going to
least.
be in there long.
I don't think so. He says he's
They're
not a
shooting
climate
at him.
denier.
They're really shooting at him.
He says climate change is happening, and then he follows that with being, yeah, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm making fun of his words. Those are not his words. His predecessor was Malcolm Turnbull, who was of the same party, but who
Yeah, but a different mindset.
a different mindset, who followed Tony Abbott, who was of the same party and was adamantly opposed to anything that was renewable. And this is what the blurb says: the lies of climate deniers have to be rejected. This is a time for truth-telling, not obfuscation and gaslighting, writes the former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. He calls for a Green New Deal in Australia. That is the equivalent of an important Republican saying he wants a Green New Deal.
I would say that's a good analogy. Yeah.
And if you don't mind my breaking in here, I know you have something to say, but I also happen to know that you've got it written in front of you.
Of course.
When I think of people who are influential, obviously Greta Thunberg comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely.
But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
She's important too.
Oh, wow, is she ever? Do you remember who co-sponsored that call for a Green New Deal with her?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I should know. I've known that, but I don't. I can't.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Okay.
You know, Senator Markey. And
of course, Markey, right.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called for a Green New Deal, and it got a lot of hype. And I got news for you. It's getting hype all over the world. This is an important movement worldwide, and Green New Deal was not new with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but its importance.
It rings a bell, though.
Its importance tracks back to her, and I think she's far more important than people give her credit for being.
Well, this particular article from The Guardian is basically a political speech.
Yes.
The whole article is this one guy talking.
It's an opinion piece by Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah. And a quick takeaway is how much of our country has to burn? Yeah. How many lives have to be lost? Homes destroyed before we resolve as a nation to act on climate change. And he goes on from there.
Yeah.
Our priority should be our own Green New Deal in which we generate as soon as possible all of our electricity from zero emission sources.
Yeah, well, all of our electricity and all of our transportation and all of our heat. Not that they need heat, but you know.
Well, yeah, he's only talking about electricity, but eventually everything's got to, we've got to stop burning carbon.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Okay. We got
a scary one here.
A scary one from Live Science. I didn't want to include the picture.
Australian megafire engulfs nearly 1.5 million acres.
You know, this is something that's frightening.
Oh, yeah.
On one of the shows that we had recently, I did the math. The fires in Australia amounted to being about this, close to the size of, comparable to the size of the state of Vermont. 1 week later, they were comparable to the size of the states of Vermont and New Hampshire put together. 1 week later, they were about 60% of the size of New England.
These are all the mega fires
this is
together.
all, yeah, and this is, it's just spreading. And, you know, this thing here, this is what they're, well, let me read this. 2 fires in southeastern Australia have merged, creating one megafire that spans 2,300 square miles, which is a little bit bigger than the state of Delaware.
It's about a quarter the size of Vermont.
One fire.
One fire. It's like all of, you know, from Bennington to Brattleboro and up to Rutland.
It's just one of at least 155 fires that are burning in New South Wales.
Just in New South Wales.
And, you know, I mean,
whoa.
Yeah. According to the Sydney Morning Herald. This is from livescience.com.
Well, the article has 3-minute slideshow with maps of Australia, and you can see all the fires burning in Australia. It's just a click, 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 click.
Oh, it's sad.
And related in photos is a devastating look at raging wildfires in Australia. This is also from that website. So Australia's really getting hit hard. Mm-hmm. They are getting hit hard.
Okay, Monday, January 13th, we have a picture here.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is an
interesting picture.
And it makes a lot of sense.
It sure does.
Largest electric school bus program in the United States is launching in Virginia.
Okay, this is from Clean Technica. Dominion Energy partnered with local Virginia school districts to begin replacing diesel buses with 100% electric school buses in phases. Thomas Built Buses Incorporated has been selected as the provider for all 50 of the initial electric school buses. Now that picture is not a Thomas built bus. That's a Proterra bus. But nevertheless, the Thomas built bus is going to look
very much like
very
that.
much like that. I mean, that's recognizably a school bus.
It's a school bus,
just
yeah.
about anybody. But this is, you know, the times are changing.
Well, it's about Dominion Energy.
Yeah.
And they're a utility.
Yeah.
And they're operating in Virginia, obviously, but they also operate in North Carolina. And they supply natural gas in Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. So they're a big utility.
But they're not dealing for natural gas burning buses. They're dealing for electric buses.
And this is about electric buses. And electric buses make a lot of sense because of the way they're used.
Yeah.
You know, they're sitting around all day.
Yeah.
Probably half
absolutely.
the time they're idling.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean.
And they go back to their headquarters where they could be recharged.
Yes.
The run of taking the kids to and from school is short.
Yeah.
They go back and they can recharge. I mean, it's a natural
It's
for
a natural,
electricity.
absolutely. Okay, our next item is from Gulf News.
Let's see if I got any more about
Oh,
this.
okay.
Well, I do, but I'm not going to bother because a lot of it's evident.
Okay, our next item is from Gulf News.
Well, before we hit this one, in this article, there's
Yeah.
a quote, and it has nothing to do with the article, but it's from from Thunberg.
Oh, from Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear what Greta
And she
Thunberg
says,
had
we
to
don't
say.
want these things done by 2050, 2030, or even 2021. We want this done now, as in right now.
Yes. Well,
She doesn't mince words.
she doesn't, and she happens to be right. And, you know, we can show that, and we've got more stuff coming up that's going to talk about that, even as we've, you know, we're 2/3 of the way through the show. And anyway, our next item is from Gulf News.
It is that. Renewable energy must double in 10 years.
The International Renewable Energy Agency, which is also called IRENA, or IRENA, said that to address climate change, renewable sources need to grow from the current 26% of global power to at least 57% by 2030. This will require annual investment in the sector to double from the current $330 billion to $750 billion a year.
Well, what they also, ARENA now, calls for a change in attitude toward renewables.
Yeah.
The key to sustainable development, which is what the renewables, because of their stability, affordability,
affordability, amazing. That's what
availability, and scalability.
And this is what everybody's complaining about. They're not having, who is against them.
Well, falling costs strengthen the case for renewables as well, with photovoltaic costs having decreased by almost 90% over the last decade.
Yeah.
And offshore wind prices having halved over the same period.
Yeah.
So renewables are getting cheaper, folks.
Again, we've talked about this in the past.
Absolutely.
It's the right curve. It is the technology curve. The prices will just keep going down according to Wright's law. Okay, we have an item here from the Japan Times,
We've
and we've got a picture
here.
of a wallaby.
Tiny wallaby down.
A wallaby, by the way, is
It's like a small kangaroo.
it's like a small. They're not small animals, but they are
Anywhere
smaller
from 18 inches to 4 feet.
Right, and
And
4 feet.
A big kangaroo can be 7 feet.
6.5, 7 feet, yeah. So a wallaby is like a kangaroo, but maybe half as tall.
Yeah.
But
It's a miniature kangaroo.
Yeah, miniature kangaroo. This is a picture of a wallaby eating a carrot.
Well, they've been airdropped.
Yeah.
That's what they've been doing here. Australian firefighters say Mega Blaze near Sydney is under control. Well, that's a little bit of good news.
Yeah, it is. Some good news. Exhausted firefighters said the largest mega blaze is under control as wet weather promised to deliver respite that is much needed. The vast Gospers Mountain fire on Sydney's northwestern outskirts has been burning out of control for nearly 3 months. This is a fire the size of Delaware, which is sitting on the edge of a city with 5 million people living in it. This is
Well, yeah. The fire and several connected blazes total over 3,000 square miles. That's
Almost
about
half.
a third of Vermont.
Yeah.
Okay. Dozens of other fires have yet to be brought under control.
Yeah, and I want to point out here in this picture, that wallaby is eating a bunch of carrots. And what's been happening is that the people who are doing this, and I don't know what agency or organization is doing it, but they're flying helicopters over areas that have been burned, where animals who are already traumatized don't have any food.
Yeah, they go back to where there's been burnt and there's no food.
There's no food. They can't eat.
That's why they're doing that.
What they do is they drop these things out of helicopters. They don't land. They just drop them.
Drop the food.
So they can drop lots and lots and lots of them in a short amount of time. And they don't have to worry about landing because when they come over with the helicopters, the animals are scared away. And so
they're not
they
worried
can just
about-
drop whatever they want to drop and don't have to worry
So
about
the
hitting an
carrots
animal.
aren't landing on the wallabies.
So the carrots, well, they're not just dropping carrots, they're dropping bales of hay. And you know, those big bales of hay, I have no idea how much they weigh. But you need a front end loader to pick one of those things up.
Well, they say that the only recorded instance of death from marijuana is when somebody dropped a bale of marijuana out of a helicopter and hit somebody.
Oh no. Okay. Let's get past that. We're up to Tuesday, January 14th, and we have an item from the BBC.
Australia fires will be normal in a warmer world.
Yeah, this is scary. UK scientists say the recent fires in Australia are a taste of what the world will experience as temperatures rise. Professor Richard Betts from the Met office, Met is what's Met?
Metropolitan?
No, it's not metropolitan. It's
I don't know.
It's the weather.
Meteorological. Yeah. Okay.
Office
makes sense.
Hadley Center said we are quote seeing a sign of what would be normal conditions under a future warming of world of 3 degrees Celsius, end quote.
Well, from the article, it says what we are seeing in Australia is not the new normal. There's a transition to worse impacts.
Yeah.
57 papers show links between climate change and the increased frequency of severity of fire weather.
You know, we haven't even hit 1.5 degrees yet, and this is what we're getting. And when we get to 3 degrees, if we get to 3 degrees, hopefully we won't. I think we're going to have situations like what's going on in Australia in the United States.
I think we have them going on already in California.
The thing in Australia is a multiple of what happened in California.
Yeah.
But the Peshtigo fire, which happened the same day as the Chicago fire in the 19th century.
Well, there's a lot of large forests in the west, in the mountains in the west.
There's a lot of large forests in Vermont and New Hampshire.
Well, it's not as vulnerable as the west, though.
It's not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, we have a picture of the Moy Wind Farm,
We do that.
that looks like some weird geological thing going up on the left side. You see that snaky stream going up, and it looks like there's an escarpment of some kind.
Yeah. Yes, it looks exactly like that.
And you see those kinds of things in the UK.
Sort of there's a river valley there between them.
Yeah.
And there is a snaky river going through it.
Yeah. Okay, we're still on January 14th, and this is from CNN.
Business leaders must help fight the climate crisis.
This is an interesting article. This is a make or break year. Global emissions have risen 3 consecutive years when they should have been dropping. If the world is to meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, I'm an optimist, and I believe we can respond with material action, but we are running out of time. And who was it that said this?
Well, I was just going to mention that. There's a statement from Grant Reed, who's the president and CEO of Mars Candy.
This is Mars
It's
Candy.
worth reading.
If you eat a Mars bar, you're supporting him.
Well, yeah. My nephew works for Mars.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, I was just with him over Christmas. He
Yeah.
was talking about it. It's a big company.
It's a big
Mars
company.
is not, they make more than just Mars bars.
Yes, they
Well,
do.
for one thing, they just recently absorbed Wrigley,
Yeah.
the chewing gum people,
Yeah.
who themselves were a big company.
Yeah.
So these guys are the biggest company in the world in candy.
Yeah.
They really are.
But they do more than candy, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But candy's principally what they do.
Candy.
But there is a lot of other stuff, too.
I used to work in a chemical factory near Hackettstown, New Jersey, and there was a big Mars plant in Hackettstown. Big local employer.
Well, that's where the headquarters are.
Is it in Hackettstown?
I think so.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Well, it's definitely in New Jersey somewhere,
Okay.
because that's where my nephew works.
Okay.
Well, there's a statement, as I mentioned, from Grant Reed, who's the president and CEO, and it's worth reading.
Yes, it
His
is.
statement is worth reading.
Yeah.
And a quick takeaway from it is, if the scientific data compelling us to take urgent climate action in this new decade isn't motivation enough, then the threat to human life, the loss of biodiversity, and the economic impact of extreme weather and natural catastrophes should surely make the case.
Yeah.
Global businesses, which he is one, of course, have a crucial role to play.
They have a crucial role to play, but they have to protect themselves, and which is one of the things that he's talking about here.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to be protective of our environment, because otherwise we're in terrible
won't have
trouble.
anything. Yep.
Yeah.
That's just what he's saying.
Okay, our next item is from CNN, and it's kind of scary.
Oceans are warming at the same rate as 5 Hiroshima bombs, as if 5 Hiroshima bombs were dropped in every second.
This is a
They've
study.
taken a look at the numbers, and this is a different way of looking at
It
the
sure
same
is.
numbers.
A study showed that 2019 was another year of record ocean warming, and this ocean warming thing is a real, honest-to-goodness problem. The world's oceans are now heating at the same rate as if 5 Hiroshima atomic bombs were dropped into the water every second of every day, the scientists
Well,
say.
there's a 7-minute video in this website that's worth looking at.
Yeah.
And basically it says how climate change impacted the world in 2019. And it shows pictures from all around the world where there's been climate change problems.
Yes. And this is one of the things that's a problem here. We've been doing this show now for, I think, 6 years, and we didn't really start talking a lot about ocean warming until maybe a year ago.
Well,
And-
that's true, but as the article says, oceans serve as a good indicator of the real impact of climate change.
Exactly. What's happened is these oceans have been absorbing carbon dioxide, and they have been absorbing heat. Most
They
of the heat.
absorb the vast majority of the world's heat.
Right. And what's happening is, as they absorb heat, they become less able to absorb heat. As they absorb carbon dioxide, they're less able to absorb carbon dioxide. I worked in a factory where one of the guys called it carbon dioxide.
Okay, carbon
Carbon dioxide.
carbon dioxide.
You got to use carbon dioxide for that. Okay.
Well, this is just a different way of looking at the numbers.
it is a different
Okay.
way.
And the amount of heat we put into the world's ocean in the past 25 years equals to 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions. It's just another way of looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
And looking at them this way, it kind of wakes you up a little bit,
Yes.
which is what it's intended to
It's
do.
what it's intended to do. Okay, we
Well,
are
we
up.
got 11 minutes left, and then we're on the last day.
Yeah,
So we got a little
but
bit of time to talk.
Wednesday, January 15th was kind of a special day for my blog.
Was it really?
Well, every
we
day,
got a-
I...
we got a picture here.
We
I'm
do.
gonna put the picture up, and you can talk.
Yeah. Every day I put up usually 15 items. If there's not a lot in the news, I'll put up 13 or even 11, but usually it's 15.
Yeah.
And every day I get bad news and I get good news. And on the 15th of January, there was 1 or 2 mildly bad news items, but the rest of them were all good.
That's unusual.
It sure is.
I mean, it's good news.
Hopefully, we're going to
Good
be...
news that it's good news.
Yeah, we're going to be moving to a different zone or something. And we have an item from the Weather Network, which, by the way, is a Canadian. I think it must be a public
I think it is
organization.
Canadian. Yep, I
But
think
it
it
is.
is.
It is Canadian because the money that it talked about was Canadian money.
Canadian money, right. Transitioning to 100% renewable energy by 2050 would pay for itself.
Would pay for itself.
Yeah.
Okay. A global effort to eliminate the world's greenhouse gas emissions implies a transition to 100% renewable energy by 2050. That's not 100% renewable electricity. That's 100% renewable for everything.
For everything.
Which means you drive a truck, it's going to be electric. You fly a plane, it's going to be electric, or in some other way renewable.
Or you're going to heat your house. It's
Yeah,
gonna be electric.
absolutely. According to analysis, that would cost 95 trillion Canadian dollars, which is 72.7 trillion American dollars. But the investment would pay for itself in 7 years. That
sounds
astonishing.
like a good deal.
Now, the story behind this
People spend more time paying for their car.
Oh, do they ever? The story behind this is material that came from Stanford University, but from other places too. And
well, it's a good article.
There's
a couple of videos in it worth looking at.
Right. Yes.
Well, the transition includes redesigning power grids,
Yes.
requiring manufacturing, transportation, and other systems to run on renewables,
Yes.
and have enough storage capacity to keep the lights on overnight.
Yes.
This is perfectly doable using solar, wind, and hydropower alone.
Yes. And you throw batteries in and it becomes easy.
The proposal does not include nuclear power, carbon capture, and
This is,
biofuels
again,
for economic reasons. They cost too much.
Yeah, Mark Jacobson is not in favor of nuclear power. He's never advocated nuclear power, as far as I can tell. I've been following this guy for years.
This is the author of the article?
Mark Jacobson didn't write this article, but his work was part of what went into this article.
Okay.
And, you know, his position on nuclear power is, look, we're talking about something here that is very, very expensive. Nuclear power, new nuclear power, you're talking
That's very expensive.
12 cents per kilowatt hour and up, where if you're combining solar, wind, and batteries, you might be talking about 5 cents per kilowatt hour down.
And it goes lower than that.
It goes lower than that. And,
I've seen as little as 2 cents.
well, that's for solar. But you throw the battery on and you got it up to almost 4. You know. So 4 cents. You know that big thing that they had in California, where the city of Los Angeles signed a power purchase agreement to buy
we just talked about
300 megawatts
Yeah.
and 400 megawatt battery. It was just in the last few weeks.
Yeah, we just talked about it.
Doing that, in order to do that, they had to get rid of capacity that was expensive. So what did they get rid of?
Coal.
Natural gas.
We get rid of natural gas.
Well, it was peaking plants.
Ah,
You
yeah,
see,
they are expensive.
They are really expensive. And this is something that people don't understand. They advocate for, we need baseload power. Well, I got news for you. We really don't need any baseload power. We need to cover the base load, but it doesn't have to be a traditional baseload power plant. It can be a lithium-ion battery or a pumped storage or whatever. But
it doesn't care where it's coming
it doesn't
from.
care. But the thing is, you cannot run a grid like we have in the United States on baseload power alone.
Well, baseload power itself is not totally unreliable, but it is unreliable. I mean,
It's unreliable.
plants go down.
It covers the minimum load that you
Yep.
need. But the thing is, those big power plants, nuclear plants, coal burning plants, combined cycle natural gas plants, those big plants are built for economies of scale. And renewable energy is undercutting the price of that plant that's been built for economy of scale. Mm-hmm. And those big plants are built to, in order to get them to the economies that they've got, they build plants that can't be ramped up or down easily. And I do my reports on nuclear energy every day, or at least every weekday. And when I do this, I watch those nuclear plants as they come online. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get them up to full head of steam.
Up and running, up and running the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there's a takeaway here. Worldwide, the transition would save the lives of 7 million people every year.
7 million people a year.
And an additional $30 trillion, that's US dollars, in health costs.
You know, not doing this is unconscionable.
The total cost, this is backing up what you just said.
Yeah.
The total cost of not transitioning is in the order of 75 trillion US per year.
Yeah.
When you add up the energy costs, the health costs, and the climate impact costs.
Yeah.
And they're real costs.
They're real costs. Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, one of the things that I keep coming back to is that the American Lung Association in California, the study they did that included the state of Vermont, where they were just looking at the health impacts of vehicles burning fossil fuels, our transportation sector fossil fuels, which would include, you know, diesel-powered trains and whatnot. $330 million a year for the state of Vermont, which is $480 per person per year. Who gets charged that? Well, all of us, except that we don't see it because it's covered by taxes and medical insurance.
Okay.
If we have a child who's suffering from asthma, we see it, and we may not realize that that's what the cause was.
You wouldn't know what the cause was, but you kind of examine things, and
Yeah.
you got to really decide: is this causing the asthma or not?
Yeah.
Pretty high probability that if it's not causing it, it's exacerbating it.
You know, one article that I came across, I think yesterday or the day before, was a really sad article about a girl who was 19 years old, went to bed and died up dead.
Huh?
She woke up dead in the morning.
Woke up dead.
Yeah. And she was
19 years old.
19 years old. And the reason they think was she had her asthma stuff next to her.
Yeah.
You know, when they found her dead.
Yeah.
She had her asthma stuff next to her. She was trying to use her cell phone. And the reason was because she was living in Sydney, I think. And so the smoke from all those fires.
Wow.
You know, and this is something that you have to start dealing with this. You know, this is a real problem. Okay, should we go on?
Well, it's something you don't even think of very much, and it's a very real problem. I mean,
Yeah.
We have talked about on this show many times the health effects of bad air.
Bad air, right.
And they're real.
They're real. They're absolutely real. And we pay, all of us, because we live in a country, all countries really are like this, but in our country, in our state, the state has expenses that have to do with the public good that are health expenses, and anybody who's got health insurance, you know, is paying for other people's medical problems.
Well, that's the way insurance works.
That's the way insurance works. We have to take that into account. Do you think Donald Trump has health insurance? You can bet your bottom dollar he does.
I would guess.
Okay, our last item is from Green Tech Media, and this is a
the last
good
item already?
item. It is.
Yeah, it is. Well, it better be a good one. Three-quarters of new U.S. generating capacity in 2020. Guess what, folks? This is 2020.
Yeah.
Will be renewable. Three-quarters.
We have a picture going up.
We do.
I didn't include it
get
there.
that picture.
Yeah, somehow. Oh, there it is.
It's there. I just didn't bring it up. Oh, it's because I
There's two
included
items.
it with the next. It could have gone with either one of these items.
Okay. We have to get
We'll bring
that
it up
last
again.
item too, so we're going to have to get through these two quickly.
Well, we got 11 minutes left.
No, we don't.
Oh no, I'm looking.
We
at
have
the
about
green
one and a half.
Yeah, we're
According
okay.
to the latest EIA data, wind and solar will make up 32 gigawatts of the 42 gigawatts of new capacity additions expected to start commercial operation in 2020, respectively, dwarfing the 9.3 gigawatts of natural gas-fired power plants that are coming online.
There's a good graph on this article showing exactly that.
Right. Let's step to the last one, because I want to do this also.
Replacing coal with renewables could save energy customers $8 billion a year.
This is just coal that's almost already half dead. And analysts from Morgan Stanley, this is Morgan Stanley, and Moody's Investment Service, Moody's, these are
the big guys.
Expect electric utilities to accelerate their transition away from coal. Replacing coal with renewable energy could save electricity customers as much as $8 billion every year. This is from DeSmog.
This is accurate, fact-based information regarding global warming misinformation campaign.
Yes. Well, this is investors coming to the public and saying you're being. In essence, they're saying you're being lied to, and this is what the truth is.
Morgan Stanley, Moody's, these are people who advise. They're investment
This is the
advisors.
U.S. economy.
Yeah.
And okay, it's time to go. So we will say, have a spectacularly enjoyable week. Come back next time.
And save energy, guys.
Save energy. Right.